nā pua a Pauahi, nā mamu a Hāloa, mai Hawaii o ke awea ni I hau o ka helelani. Nā makamaka a hoa kanaka mā kahipae a kahipae o ka honua. Velina me ke aloha. Aloha, o wau o Awapui Ulufale, your host for E Mau Kea, Sovereignty Endures, the pre-show for the 106th Kamehameha Schools Song Contest, Pauahi Nona Kalei, songs honoring Princess Bernice Pauahi Bishop. Over 1,800 high school haumana of Kamehameha Schools Kapalama will lift their voices in tribute to an extraordinary woman, a chiefess with vision and compassion, who chose education as a means to empower her people toward a future of self-governance and self-determination. Ea. Pauahi Pāki was born on December 19, 1831 in Honolulu to High Chiefs Abner Pāki and Laura Koania. As the great-granddaughter of King Kamehameha I, Pauahi inherited thousands of acres of land, much of it from the estate of her cousin Princess Ruth Ke'Liko'olani. This would form the foundation of a profound educational legacy that would uplift the lahui of Pauahi's day and empower the lahui of our day. Tonight's pre-show will explore different manifestations of Ea, such as Hawaii's international standing in the 19th century, Pauahi's childhood impressions of the return of Hawaii's sovereignty, contemporary expressions of living Ea in Kaho'olawe and Lahaina, cinematic Kanaka storytelling in Chief of War, the pursuit of Ea throughout Moananui-a-Kea, and special Mele composed for Pauahi by the students themselves. No Laila, please enjoy this year's song contest pre-show, E Mau Kea. From a young age, Princess Pauahi was surrounded by the most powerful ali'i of her time. With an eye towards diplomacy and relationship building, the independent Kingdom of Hawaii became one of the most internationally engaged nations in the Pacific and throughout the world. In February of 1843, while Pauahi was attending the Chief's Children's School, Hawaii was illegally occupied by the British. While this occupation lasted only 5 months before sovereignty was restored to the Hawaiian Kingdom, the affair left its mark on the young, impressionable Hawaiian royals. As an 11-year-old, Princess Pauahi wrote in her journal about the joy she felt in seeing the High Hawaii raised during the ceremony for La Ho'iho'i Ea on July 31st.
The urgency for Kamehameha to unite the islands was because of the new arrivals of Europeans. His rise to power coincided with the ability of he and his chiefs to negotiate the acquisition of firearms. What Kamehameha understood was military force and power, a foundation for them to be able to defend themselves. However, after he passes away, the population of the Hawaiian Islands, the Kanaka themselves, are dying by the tens of thousands. What are the strategies for remaining independent under those conditions? It cannot be military. So what they do, it was the decision of our chiefs to set this nation on that path, to adopt those kinds of Western frameworks of civilized government that might protect them from other countries who will see them as similar, as civilized.
In 1842, Kauikeoli comes up with a plan to get international recognition of his sovereignty, of his independence. So he sends William Richards, Timoteo Ha'alilio, and Sir George Simpson to go off and gain the recognition of Hawaiian independence. While they're on a ship on their way to London, this man, George Paulette, lands here in Hawaii, and he makes demands of the king. He essentially takes the kingdom. The king says, I cannot abide by what you want. So he's ceding his nation. This whole thing plays out for 5 months. All the Hawaiian flags are lowered, British flags are raised, and everything is ruled by the British. On July 31st, Admiral Thomas comes here. He lands here, negotiates with the king. They have a huge ceremony, La Ho'iho'ia, at Kulo Kahua, where the British flag is lowered, the Hawaiian flag is put back up. Pauahi is a young girl. Pauahi writes this in her journal, and she draws pictures of a ship and flags, and that was her, what she captured being a young 10, 11-year-old of that day.
So when Pauahi views the restoration of our sovereignty, of our air, and that flag comes down and the Hawaiian flag is restored, what a moment that would be. Absolutely provocative moment for a young chiefess to see and realize with great pride what her relative, Kaho'olawe, has done. He has managed to do something that so many other countries were unable to do. At the time that Pauahi was born, missionaries were predicting that by the early part of the 20th century, there'd be no Hawaiians left. And to consider the fearlessness of meeting a future that appeared so grim, and yet to invest such hope in your people and such faith that we would not disappear, that we would continue to be a lahui into the future. It's important for us to honor Pauahi because she does represent the best of us, not just for the gift of these lands. It's that she invested in our people's education.
In the 1820s, the first primer is done with the missionaries together with the chiefs, and boom, literacy happens. The first school happens. All these things happen. Hawaii, within a decade, is one of the most literate nations in the world. Almost 95% literacy rate in Hawaii, where in the United States it's like 35. Great Britain, it's even less. Because literacy was saved for the elite, for the higher makamaka, right? But here, our king said, Heau puni palapala ko'u, mine shall be a nation of literacy. And when he said that, he was already literate. So he meant it for his people.
Between 1840 and the taking of our kingdom, Kalakaua is the first head of state to circumnavigate the world. And his visit to other countries was not just to project a kind of image of Hawaii, it was to learn about those countries. As a result of that, he inaugurated this Hawaiian Youths Abroad, this program that was just so ingenious. We didn't have a university here, so send them to other countries. And you know, this is one of those things that really indicate just how far-seeing this country was in terms of that international world and the need to engage.
Pauahi understood that education was the key to developing an informed Hawaiian citizenry that could navigate international politics, preserve self-governance as an independent nation, and act in the interests of the kingdom on a global stage. This was the era of Pauahi's time. On January 4th, 1976, a group of activists known as the Kaho'olawe 9 defied a U.S. Coast Guard blockade and landed on Kaho'olawe. They were protesting the U.S. Navy's desecration of the island, which had been used for military training since World War II. Their actions led to the eventual end of the bombing in 1990 and the return of the island to the state of Hawaii in 1994.
When I accepted the invitation to go to Kaho'olawe, I had very little knowledge of what was happening on that island. But when I got there, things changed. My whole life changed. I graduated from Kamehameha schools in 1963. The school was all about military at that time. In trying to save the island of Kaho'olawe, I had to use all of the skills I learned at Kamehameha schools. But we survived. We was eating coconuts, grabbing eels that was crawling on the papa. And they sent platoons over to try and find us, and they could never find us. They convinced everybody we were not there, and they started bombing again. But it didn't matter what they did. They were not going to destroy and kill the island of Kaho'olawe. At that time, it was the television coverage every single night that put us into the limelight. And even though the military kept saying that these were militant Hawaiians, they were the military. All we had to protect us was the tea leaf that we put on our headbands and on our wristbands.
With deep anticipation that Kaho'olawe once again be returned to the 5th District. Second motion.
When we did defeat the United States military, our response was that Aloha defeated the United States military. It wasn't us. It was that Aloha for the place, for the land. It's the power of Aloha that defeated the United States military.
For 50 years, the Protect Kaho'olawe Ohana, PKO, has served as an exemplar of Oiwi leadership and a catalyst for Aloha Aina and Ea. Courageous acts of heroism and patriotism and the restoration of ceremony and kapu have resulted in profound cultural, educational, environmental, and political change. Kaho'olawe is the embodiment of Ea.
Aloha mai kākou. O wano kei o ke aloha aina ka aimoku I ka leo ka haukani kanoa wang. I am a junior here at Kamehameha Kapālama. I'm also a 7th generation descendant of Ohana taking care of Kaho'olawe. Tonight I get the chance to sit down and talk to Anakala Kaliko Baker, one of our kua and mo'olona with the Protect Kaho'olawe Ohana. How did you and your Ohana get pili to Kaho'olawe, and what is the drive that keeps you guys to stay connected to Kaho'olawe?
My friends in Hawaiian language, a lot of Hawaii classes back in the early 90s were going, and they kept coming back with these amazing mo'olelo huaka'i. And so I took Professor Daviana McGregor's class, Ethnic Studies 221, with the sole purpose of going on the huaka'i makahiki. At the end of the huaka'i, one of the women on the trip asked me, "Oh, so Kaliko, you coming back for closing?" I was naive. I said, "I don't know. Maybe if they'll have me back." And she said something so obvious yet so important. If you start something, you finish it. And I said, "Oh, so I guess I'm coming." Started coming back makahiki, and then later I learned of my family's involvement with the movement. My auntie Leilani, she used to run the newsletter for the Protect Kaho'olawe Ohana.
One thing that I remembered was you explained Auntie Emma DeFries, she walked the beach and she olied and called all the makani back on island. And I was wondering what the significance of holding that aha was.
They called for the Ohana to do ceremony, to engage Kaho'olawe through the kapu of the land. And so that the Ohana would see the land not as a geographical feature, but rather see the land as an ancestor, a god. That generation re-engaged the model, started to re-engage ceremony. They said, okay, no, we're gonna make ceremony, we're gonna land, we're gonna make imu, we're gonna have hokupu, we're gonna bring pua'a, we're gonna bring kalo, we're gonna bring niu, we're gonna bring ava, and we're gonna drink ava. We are not just saving the geography, the ecosystems on the land. We're fighting for the kua, we're fighting for the kapu of this aina so that we can restore this aina.
You said that without kapu we don't have ea. What does that mean?
In the context of the Kaho'olawe movement, the kapu of ceremony is what has driven us since that ceremony on February 13th, 1976. The kapu of the ceremony creates a sort of magic that moves out beyond the lahui who are partaking in the kapu, who are participating in the kapu, who are engaging, who are realizing the kapu. And it creates this sort of mana that goes out and affects other things. You know, why would a president give away one of their greatest assets for target practice? You know, it's the magic of kapu. Without the kapu, you don't realize that sort of broader ea.
The a'ali'i plant has firm roots. It can withstand even the strongest of winds. In the wake of the profound devastation and loss in Lahaina, the purposeful propagation of a'ali'i serves not only to revegetate the scorched aina, but is also a symbol of patience and perseverance, of grit and grace. Planting efforts by the haumana of Kamehameha School's Maui, I'a'apueo, remind us that hope for the future is in the hands of the youth today.
Our town didn't burn down because of our fire. Our town burned down because of all of this stuff that happened before. It changed from growing all of this food, being so abundant in water, and then that changed from, you know, a lack of water, plantation style lifestyle, and then to like tourism economy, which is what I grew up in.
These like critical events, such as the fire, these environmental issues, they are in fact direct products of colonization. Dispossession of the landscape, disenfranchisement of the people, of course, then transitioning towards that point of assimilation, creating that disconnect in cultural identity and the language, and then the physical land base, of course, are the things that set precedence for this. That sense of community is very much so amplified with the void that has been so abruptly presented at the time, you know, and so time didn't really stop for anybody, and so the Kumu took it upon themselves, I would say, to, you know, at least try to recreate some facet of normalcy for these keiki at the time, well, to basically, one, keep them engaged, to sort of take them out of there, and then also to examine the factors that resulted in the fire itself.
Ke Kula Kaiopuni o Lahaina Luna is a dynamic hub of traditional learning for families devoted to Olelo Hawaii, our native language, and the ancestral values and worldview that define us as Kanaka. They played a tremendous role in community service during Lahaina's greatest hour of need, which was part of the keiki's education, a reflection of Ea.
When we sat down as Kumu to kind of figure out like what we were gonna do, we wanted to highlight Maui Komohana in general. We wanted to highlight all of the different pilina that we have to these places and the people that maybe malama all of these different areas. One of the places we got to go to was Napili Bay. Pre-fire, or like right now too, it's loaded with malihini, tourists and everything, but right after the fire, when Lahaina was still kind of closed off to everybody, we were able to have that space to be there. Probably one of the highlights of our whole Papahana Huaka'i was, you know, seeing our ohana from our kaiulu talk about their own mo'olelo of them growing up. You know, because sometimes we don't get those opportunities, or they don't get that space and time anymore with all of our keiki, all of our haumana.
Being able to take our keiki to these different places within Lahaina, to sort of see these historical places and understand what our role is to help center our own historical narratives, our own cultural narratives, and then the practices that come with that revitalization. I think that was the main point that we were trying to get to. We have everything that we need, We were what we need at the time, And so we got to realize that this sense of air, in some minds, maybe it's eroded to a certain sense, but maybe perhaps out of survival. But understand that the truth lies there just as plain as we look at the mountains now, yeah, just as plain as the books in front of us. These histories are very much so present.
Lahaina Luna has been a beacon of learning for some 194 years. The planting of a special tree by Queen Liliuokalani in 1906 and the tradition of the famous L are reminders that education is the key to ea, to self-determination, and that the torch of knowledge must always burn brightly, never to be extinguished.
It is actually the oldest school west of the Mississippi River that is still open today. Boarding started in 1836, so this will be 190 years of boarding at Lahaina Luna.
There's a lot of scholars, like important people to Hawaii, to the people of Hawaii that were Lahaina Luna alumni. When it first opened, it was only a boarding school. And it was actually a kulanui, right? Like ke kulanui or Lahaina Luna. So the boarding department housed not only students from across the Pauahi, but, you know, across the Pacific. I found the article in the Hawaiian language newspapers. Somebody had wrote about the event that Queen Liliuokalani had gone to Lahaina Luna High School and celebrated Arbor Day in 1906. That was the last plant that was planted by Liliuokalani.
Unfortunately, the initial tree died or fell down, and there was no record of where the tree was. But we've always talked about looking at it and replanting the tree. And finally, we said, let's go look for a royal palm tree, and let's go replant it in the general area where the tree was. Message that the Queen had to those borders in 1906 that still holds true to what the hope is for borders today. She had remarked to the borders, or to the principal at the time, that as that tree grows up in strength and beauty, so I hope that they will grow also strong and noble, and that they will be a pride to their parents, to the school, and to the country. And at the time, we know what country she was referring to. The lighting of the L actually started in the 40s. When it's lit, that brings everybody together. And you can see it from Lanai, from Molokai. Part of the motto is Ipukukui pio ole I kamakani o Kaho'olawe. No matter how strong the winds of Kaho'olawe, it cannot extinguish the torch of knowledge.
An important dimension of our sense of sovereignty is the telling of our own stories in our own words, on our own terms. Chief of War was a cinematic breakthrough as Hawaiians and Maori had more influence in the creative and artistic interpretations of the traditional culture portrayed on screen. The scale of the production and the global reach of the promotion was unprecedented, and the commitment to Olelo Hawaii was a historical milestone. In terms of art and industry, Chief of War was an expression of ea like no other.
No lila ka mamua ka hele ana I Aotearoa. Nui loko u no ana I ke ano ka ohana. Ho'ono kai leka wila. Ia pa'akai. A hai gini uia. A ewa hai pololea gini ia ai. Ke kuno ku wawai I ka lepo Aotearoa. A alewa o leo haole ana I ke keipoe. No leila me kela ka ohana ke la ke ia la o ka pai wiki o ana, a ale o leo haole. O ka umea iki ai, o ka wala au, ko kako po e leo, ko ka kakako o leo Hawaii, o ia ke ali'i, o ia ke ea, a no'o me ke la ko kako po e kupuna. Ma ka kau au lava no kai ka ko Pauahi e hapai, a wamo noi I ke la no kuleana, na o I no I kau.
What I do as an actor is very much an art form. You have three different interpretations, myself, the writer, and the director. And my job is to make sure that the fourth voice is heard. That fourth voice being the kupuna himself, Ke'eaumoku. I had to open up myself in ways that I felt was respectful to this kupuna, being that I don't share koko with him. The ahu'ula that Ke'eaumoku wore, it was lost in a fire. Because it was documented so well, this particular ahu'ula, it was made an exact replica of his actual ahu'ula. I put it on, and it was a very powerful feeling. When I left that room, I got into the elevator, I went downstairs, I stepped off of the elevator, and my back froze up right in the exact same spot of where that black dot was. I couldn't move. And I realized that was actually him. That was Ke'eaumoku with his hand physically on my spine, telling me, I can support you in this moment. I can kako'o your spine, or I could break your spine. It was a choice that I had to make, and the choice was be true to the story. Lo and behold, we had a beautiful and a powerful show that became of this.
Hey, Bob. Tutu. Aloha mai kākou. My name is Michael Goodhue. I am a senior at Kamehameha Kapalama. Today I have my dad, Iowane Goodhue. He's an actor. He's been in many short films such as Alamana Boys and Imalama Pono Willie Boy. He's also been in Chief of War. I also have my tutu, Kau'i Saidurua. She's one of the alaka'i at Avaiolu. Tutu, growing up, what was like the thing that drove you to want to learn our history and our mo'olelo?
When I was in 7th grade, I had a Hawaiian history teacher who, at the end of our course, which I loved, I asked what happened. How come we're no longer in charge? How come Hawaiians aren't in charge like the history she just taught us? And she said, Hawaiians gave it all away for a nail. I knew she was wrong, but I couldn't prove it. I had no tools to argue, and I knew someday I would. That's what put me on this path to learn our history. I grew up in the 70s, and at the time I was growing up, it wasn't cool to look like me. But the Renaissance was starting. Kaho'olawe, Kalama Valley, Sand Island, Hokulea, all these big things were happening as I was growing up. So we were all captured really by the question, what does it mean to be a Hawaiian in Hawaii? And what is that kuleana to us? What kuleana do we have in being a Hawaiian in Hawaii?
What role do you guys think storytelling plays in our journey to strengthen our knowledge in Hawaiian history?
Yeah, the 19th century, the 1800s, the Kingdom era, I think is a fascinating, cloudy part of our ike that, and mo'olelo for a lot of folks to help transition us to the mo'olelos that happened before we even get here today, you know? Like, and I think that that's a good way to unpack history too, is like package it in a way that's digestible.
I was on Mauna Kea when I was introduced to Pakai Sibit, and then soon thereafter, Jason Momoa and his entourage came over and we met and sat on the Mauna for like an hour, and they shared with me all the different projects that they were wanting to work on and that they wanted it to be in Olelo, Hawaii. Chief of War gave us a gift that we never thought we would see yet in our lifetimes. We were there at the premiere out in Ko'olina, and the people were tearing to see their language on this huge screen, and to hear it so, like, it was blasting. Whether you understand it or not, it was seeing Hawaii and Hawaiians in a place where everybody could see us. The spotlight was on Hawaii and Hawaiians.
The agency is slowly swinging back to us, so the call is for storytellers who are skilled and competent to shuttle such information forward, you know. So like, I've been planting huli in this lo'i long time before I had crops to harvest, and so I'm grateful there's harvest now, but I like to see more Kanaka in this lo'i doing this work.
It's a beautiful feeling just to know that what many of us have been working for so long is happening in this moment. When I started, I had no blueprint. I had to just trust that, okay, I'm not going to be the only one. Eventually, more will come. Eventually, our stories will be told on a big scale.
All of the actors just was willing to give everything for this mo'olelo. We all talk about mana, how it feels, and I really cannot describe how crazy and comfortable and like meant to be it felt for me, putting all those things on and speaking our language.
The momentum generated by the Moananui Akea voyage of the Polynesian Voyaging Society, the 13th Festival of Pacific Arts in Honolulu, and the World's Indigenous Peoples Conference on Education, or WIPSI, in Aotearoa, have helped to generate interest in the Pacific as the ancestral oceanic homeland of Hawaiians. Kamehameha Schools established the Aha Moananui Akea Pacific Consortium, which now has over a dozen active cultural educational partnerships across the Pacific, including Tahiti, Ra'iatea, Aotearoa, Rapa Nui, Cook Islands, Taiwan, and Alaska.
I feel strongly that we're connected better to those elements, to the natural world, through our language, because that's just how it was passed down to us. It was in te reo. I mean, you can always translate everything in French or English. People anywhere in the world, if they speak their language, their native language, then they can do so much more for those places, for their people, but also for the space they are living in. That's a lot of data, a lot of knowledge that you can have instead of just relying on the modern scientist who's been only around for a few decades.
Education is a high priority because it helps us to understand our place in the world as Māori. Focusing on who we are first. Once you get a solid foundation with that, and then that will set the platform for everything else. Our people are now standing at the forefront, taking the lead, but there's also the Western world. It's a reality that we have to deal with. With education and understanding how things work will give us a huge advantage. And so we work with the two worlds together to help us capitalize on all the opportunities to ensure our next generations thrive.
I believe education is essential. It is the foundation of how we protect indigenous rights and culture. Because in school, we decide what matters. So education is never neutral. It can either affirm who we are or quietly erase us. Through education, young people come to see that they are not simply part of the minority group. They belong to a people with history, territory, and dignity. And education helps us carry our identity forward, not as something fragile, but as something alive. So in that way, education becomes a quiet but powerful expression of sovereignty.
Kamehameha School's agency to reach out and establish declarations and collaborations is a reflection of Indigenous international relations and diplomacy. Ea. In this special year, dedicated to Pauahi, the 4 co-ed song directors worked with their respective class cohorts and kumu to compose Mele honoring the princess. Today, with the increase of Olelo Hawaii speakers, the art of composition has become more prevalent. To compose Mele and communicate in our own native language contributes to our sense of ea. We offer these new Mele as ho'okupu to our beloved founder as an expression of e mau kea, Pauahi nona kale.
The theme for this year's song contest is Pauahi nona kale. What we did this year for the men's and women's competition was we chose 6 songs that were previously composed by all alumni of Kamehameha, and then the 4 co-eds were newly composed. In the first year's of song contest, all of the songs were brand new. They were written by the students and also arranged by the students. So kind of going back to that tradition and having the haumana work together as a class to write their own composition for the rest of their classmates, I think that's a really good gift that they can share with their fellow ho'opapa. and not only give this makana to their classmates, but give this makana back to Pauahi. Yeah, the gift that keeps on giving is her love and her aloha through this institution that we call Kamehameha.
Not just taking English words and then translating it into Hawaiian, it's actually tapping into their na'au. The depth of the olelo becomes a lot more relevant. And when you look at it from a Kanaka lens, then you tap into that kupuna DNA that naturally comes out. And what's super cool about that is that all of our haumana are Kanaka. So not only do they physically meeting together, but they bring generations of kupuna behind them with that ike that's pushing them through. Our mo'olelo didn't stop at 1893, and this isn't a new thought, but we need to consistently create, because what that does is that with our resources like the Nupepa Olelo Hawaii, Kaleo Hawaii, that's just a snapshot in time. So now with the Haku Mele, this gives our haumana the opportunity to create their snapshot in time. So multi-generations after, hey, mauhanau na mahope maila, they can go back and look and reflect on that, and that's, oh, you know what? That was my kupuna that added to that mo'olelo, to that mele.
The title of our mele is Eola Hawaii Ya Pauahi Lani Nui, and it is translated to Hawaii thrives because of Pauahi. Our mele talks about how Pauahi grows up to become a leader for us, and how her legacy will continue to impact and have a lasting effect on Hawaii itself. What I want people to take away from my mele is that students of Kamehameha schools, even the freshmen, have a deep understanding of who we're forever indebted to and why we're forever grateful for her.
The name of my song is E Mau Kaho'olawe o Pauahi Lani, and that means may the legacy of Pauahi live on. The overall story of my mele talks about Pauahi's life, specifically her will, and sort of how that was created and how it lives on in Hawaii today. It's very special that I get to direct this mele because not only is it representing Pauahi, but it's also representing our class and all of the hard work that we put into this mele. And I'm just so excited to spread this message.
Our song for the juniors this year is Lei Hiva Hiva o Kamehameha, and that translates to Beloved Lei of Kamehameha. We wanted to have an overall theme for our song, and that theme was vai, or water. We used that to signify the metaphor of Princess Pauahi's love for us and the strength that we get. And in the song, you'll actually see water being mentioned in many forms such as rain, mist, spring, and ocean.
The name of our song this year is Ka'iwa Kikahalani. The overall story of our mele this year is Pauahi's life. We wanted to first start it with a little bit of genealogy, where she came from, even lines from her birth chant, and then we wanted to move on to how she was as an ali'i in the middle of her life. For my class this year, I want them to know that this song is for them. In all 4 of our years, we have never written a song for us, so I want them to sing out, sing proud, and be papa ula ula.
Our mo'olelo never ended. Our mo'olelo continues, and so does Keali'i Pauahi's mo'olelo. Her legacy, her lokomaikai is ongoing. Everybody has a role and a kuleana in that.
Everything that I am is because of Pauahi. Everything that I do for the Lahu is because of Pauahi. She's the reason why a lot of Hawaiians know who they are as a Hawaiian person. Yeah.
It's important to honor Pauahi, not just for the gift of these lands, not just for the fact that she was willing to leave them, to our lahui. It's that she invested in our people's education. All the guns, all the ships, all the planes, all the things that countries put together for their own protection really, really cannot match the power of knowing who you are, knowing who your ancestors were, knowing that great and glorious story of how we survived that 19th century, how we have survived the 20th century, and how we are poised right now, in these years, to be our own country again.